What is a unique game you played as a child? We made up a game called camera tag, basically hide and seek, but it would have to be in the dark, and you have to have a camera. If you spot someone, you have to take a picture of them with the flash on. If they're in the picture they get caught and they're out. We would take dad's snuff can full of rocks and tape it shut. Then we all face the same way as a designated person through the can way out in the open pasture at night. All players set out to find it, and if you picked it up and made it back to the finish line it was a point. The rocks were audible if shaken. If you were able to tackle the runner before he crossed the line, no point and rethrow. First to 5 wins or first to break a bone loses. We called it that game tackle football, free for all 4 or 5 younger kids, 7-9-yo, versus 1 or 2 bigger kids, 11-12-yo. I was one of the little kids. No real rules except to keep the football. Young kids gang tackled the big kid and tried to strip the ball, or big kid would deck the little kids and take the ball. We all loved it, but it abruptly ended when my buddy ran face first into a tree and split his face open. Parents were not having it when we told them what we were playing. RIP that game. Bocky or bike hockey, even though only one person was on a bike. There were 3 of us, so the game was played 2v1. The 2 people are on rollerblades with hockey sticks and a ball, a hard plastic street hockey ball. The one person was on a bike. The object of the game was to shoot the ball between the wheels of the bike. If we got it through, we got a point. If he blocked it with his foot, he got a point. We had a 50-yard stretch of our street we'd play on. We actually used to set a timer and play for 3 5-minute periods. I have a thing for tournaments. I don't know what it is, but I love brackets. I've read books with nothing but brackets of random shit. Best vegetable or best vacation spots and shit like that. On my summer breaks from school, I would stay up super late, like 6 AM, and I would spend my time playing this tournament game while listening to sports talk radio. Basically I would write down the names of my friends and people I knew and fill out a bracket. I'd flip a coin to see who won. The first round started as best of 5 and they got progressively longer, with a loser's bracket that was best of 3. When a player got enough flips in his favor, they would move to the next round. After a champion was crowned, I would calculate all the winning percentages by hand and use their overall records to seed them going into the next tournament. I still have notebooks full of these tournaments in my parents' shed. My cousin and I were convinced that his neighbor's house has diamonds in the garden. We found a bunch of shiny diamond-shaped things in their yard scattered in random places. We used to dig up the dirt hoping no one would notice to find more of these diamonds. I think we found 10 and we split them in half. We would come back again and again looking for them. We made a promise not to tell any other kids or our parents about them. One day my mom found one of my diamonds in the pocket of my trousers and asked me if she should throw it. I was shocked. Why would she throw away an expensive diamond? Turns out, they were glass teardrop pieces of an old chandelier they threw away. I was so disappointed because we even planned to buy a Lamborghini with the money. My horses. Whenever we were on a road trip, or honestly on any sort of drive, my family would try and spot horses before anyone else did. You had to shout my horses and then count them. It was a running tally, but no one ever really kept score once the trip finished. Whoever had the most was the winner. There was a way to get back in the game, however. If you drove past a graveyard or church cemetery, you could yell bury your horses and everyone who had horses would go back to 0 except the one who spotted the cemetery. It was a cutthroat game, and if someone had a lot of horses, that is just drove past a farm and brother has 13, then the whole family would be on high alert looking for cemeteries. It was a fun way to pass the time. I've unconsciously played the game in friends' cars because I'm so conditioned at this point and it scared the shit out of them, haha. It was dead quiet and we drove past a farm. I ain't giving up this chance to get ahead. Got my friends playing it now and I'll keep the tradition alive. Edit. Thank you guys for the gold and silver. I had no clue that this game was so popular. We thought about playing with cows but the numbers would have been so high, haha. Horses were more rare and thus everyone had to be on high alert to spot them. Good times. My grandma had a bunch of huge novelty-size balls of yarn when I was growing up. I'm talking these things had to have been like 4 feet in diameter with yarn as thick as my child arms. And what my grandma would do is unravel the yarn balls and stick one of our toys in the center and then yarn the yarn ball back up nice and tight and toss the yarn's balls in the backyard. The idea was we had to get the toy out of the center, but we weren't allowed to use our hands to do it. Our hands would be tied behind our backs so we didn't cheat. We'd be out there for hours hurling our tiny bodies at these giant yarn balls trying to unravel them and get to that sweet toy in the middle, and me and my sister would work together where she'd find a long branch and use her mouth to fish it down the back of my shirt and into my pants, and I'd hold the branch with my butt cheeks, and so with the branch sticking out, I'd kind of be like a human fork. We usually made good progress with that move, but that yarn was so heavy. Sometimes we'd succeed, sometimes we wouldn't, and when we didn't, Grandma would walk outside shaking her head in mock disappointment, grab whatever loose end there was and unravel the whole yarn ball with one clean jerk. I miss Grandma. Not sure how my 2 older brothers and I came up with the game, but I remember it being stupid, dangerous fun. One of my older brother's bedrooms had no windows, so if we put a towel under the door to block out the light, it was essentially pitch black in the room. We also had one of those old film cameras that had an operational flash that would work whenever you hit the shutter button. We also had a small rubber eraser, and that's all we needed. What we'd do is line up at one end of the pitch black room, and one of us would throw the eraser towards the bed, and at the same time another would press the flash button on the camera, which would fill the dark room in a brilliant white light for just a millisecond. Just enough so we could see a freeze frame of where the eraser was in its mid-flight and where it might be landing on the bed. The image would be burned into our eyes as the room went dark again, and from there, and us being precocious young boys, would then begin our vicious, violent race to see who could recover the eraser first. I think our parents finally put a stop to the game when one of my brothers misjudged his initial launch angle after the flash went off, and dove face first into a jutting corner of the wall, as blood poured from his nose all over my other brother's bed in the pitch black room while we fought over that precious eraser. After that got shut down, I believe we went into the living room after each grabbing a sleeping bag from the storage room, and we would each climb into one backwards, so our head was at the foot of the sleeping bag. Once we were all settled in our bags, then we began our brutal battle to the death. We called it Slugfest, and I believe there is an old VHS tape of Slugfest 93 kicking around somewhere. Good times. The bomb game. We threw a ball around, and if you got hit, you had to lie on the ground for 5 seconds before returning to the game. My sister and I and our brother like cousins would play this against our uncles, and although I'm pretty sure if we actually kept score, we kicked their butts. Eventually all the uncles and my dad joined in, and the youngest uncle joined the kids team. He told us he played the bomb game in high school. My younger cousins actually believed this, and we wanted him on our team anyway because he was more like the biggest kid. It eventually became a family tradition. Back in the day when my family actually saw each other. One time my dad took me to a church retreat for the weekend, and all the kids there decided that they were going to play manhunt in the woods at night. I was super stoked. It sounded awesome. I can't convey how hyped I was the whole trip upstate for this epic game of manhunt. Earlier in the day we were fishing at a lake. My line kept getting hooked on a tree, so I decided to walk along the edge of the lake to a better spot. I twist my foot a bit and land in this dirty ass lake filled with moss and shit. After I go clean myself up and don't want to fish anymore, so I'm now playing by some monkey bars in the playground there. A kid slips and lands directly on my head. I get a concussion. By the time night comes, I'm in bed with a concussion and a 105.5 fever, which I assume was caused by accidentally drinking some mossy water. I did not play manhunt that day. To top it all off, my Star Fox game watch was broken from the water. That's my unasked for church retreat story. We were inadvertent LARPers. My friend lived on a mini farm. They had chickens, llamas, and goats, and his mom would make up Ziploc bags of Monopoly money and hide them all over the place. We would go out and fight imaginary bad guys and find the bags of money so we could upgrade our gear. I was a cleric, so I started with a staff which I upgraded to silver, duct tape on the ends, then later to metal. We hammered Mountain Dew cans as metal end pieces. We made suits of armor out of cardboard boxes which we upgraded similarly. The best was the road by his house. It was the river, and whenever a car would go by it would represent some sahags, water monsters, jumping out. So we would come flying out of the bushes and start swinging our homemade weapons like crazy people. It was the early 90s in the middle of nowhere. Edit. Instead of answering everyone individually, TL. Doctor, we stayed in contact through high school. I went on an epic cross-country Amtrak trip when I was 16 with them. We drifted apart for about 15 years before reconnecting on Facebook. I made his mom cry good tears when I was able to tell her just how much he meant to me growing up. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm only 16, so I hope you didn't cringe from the editing. I hope we can get to 50,000 subscribers because I wouldn't be here without all of you. So thank you so much for your time and energy, and please subscribe.